look after secondary education visits, but I work right across the curriculum, from EYFS right through to further and higher education. And Corenz has very kindly kind of let me come here today to tell you a little bit about our kind of newest visitor attraction, which is the Faith Museum. So I do have a bit of a presentation. I've tried to keep it as non-kind of PowerPointy as I can, but it's got some pictures of the museum, some of the things that we have inside. So I'll run through that in a minute. But just before I do that, I'll also give you a little bit of an introduction to the organisation that I work for and why we've made a faith museum, because that's usually a question that we get asked. Who are you and why have you done this incredible but slightly strange thing? So I work for an organisation called the Auckland Project, and we are a heritage regeneration charity based in Bishop Auckland in County Durham. And we operate and own a range of arts and heritage attractions that we use to stimulate social and economic regeneration in the town of Bishop Auckland. So we've got a whole host of different visitor attractions that you can come and visit. We've got Auckland Castle, which has gardens and a deer park. We've got a Spanish gallery. We have got mining art gallery, Weardale Railway, and as of, I think it was the 6th of October, we have got the brand new Faith Museum as well. And the Faith Museum, it's about, sorry, it's about 10 years in the making, so it's a huge, huge project. And it is the first museum in England to tell the story of faith in Britain from prehistory to the present day. It's housed in both a historic part of Auckland Castle and a modern extension. And one of the reasons that we decided to do this is firstly because it's a gap in the market. It's not something that exists currently within the UK, really. But also Bishop Auckland in particular, but the Northeast in general, we know that we have such a massive history in terms of faith, particularly Christianity, but not exclusively. And so it felt like the right place to kind of do that, and the right time for us as well, because it enables us to explore so many different themes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen just now. Now I have practiced this, so it should work. Here we go. And then if I click play from beginning, I've given it the title there, which is How Can We Use Art and Museum Collections to Support RE? And I will get into that. But for now, I'll show you. Oh, is it? It's not playing as a presentation. There we go. But I'll give you an idea of the museum. So the museum itself is spread over 4 separate galleries. The bottom two, the two that are sort of downstairs, are historical. So they chart the story of faith from roughly 5,000 years ago to the year 2000. And then the top 2 galleries are contemporary. So they look at faith in the 21st century using very high quality art and craft. So gallery 1 downstairs sets the scene. In the middle image, you can see that's the kind of view as you come in. It starts with an exploration of faith and religious belief in the Stone Age. So the object that you can see to the very, very left of the middle image is an object, a local object called the Gainford Stone, which is a Neolithic cup and ring stone. It's got very early kind of ritualistic markings. But as you go through, we're in chronological order, you get to the Romans, which you can see they are in that lovely purple archway on the left hand side, and again we've got a really lovely mix of different objects through there. We've got the little Mars, which I've shown on the right. I think he's my favorite object in the museum, which is why he's there. He's just very cute. But we've got everything from one of the earliest Christian objects to be found in the UK that was actually found at Binchester, which is just up the road from us. We have got early Romano-Jewish objects. We have got Romano-British objects, lots and lots and lots of different things. We go right through the Anglo-Saxons and Vikings in this gallery as well. So we look at the growth of Christianity during the early medieval period. And it takes us kind of up to roughly kind of 1066, the Norman conquest in here. Then in gallery 2, I'll go across. This is a much bigger space, as you can see, and this takes us the next 1,000 years. You'll notice as each space goes on, the time period that we look at gets shorter and shorter. The simple reason is we have more stuff the closer we get to the present. So we need more space to explore it all. But we cover everything from medieval monasticism, medieval Judaism as well. We've even got an ancient Islamic object in there. Well, a medieval Islamic object, as I should say, takes us right through the Reformation, through the early modern period. And so when we're looking at that, we've got things like very early King James Bible, a Tyndale Bible as well, which is really exciting for me. I've got a history background, so I get really excited about this stuff. All the way through to the Industrial Revolution, and we look at things like Charles Darwin's The Origin of the Species and the impact that that had on various different Christian communities, through into the 20th century, and obviously the impact of immigration and the Empire Windrush movement as well, faith and war, faith and sport, lots of different topics and lots of different themes, so much to explore. And these are from collections, objects right across the UK, but also we try and keep a local angle where we can as well. And that's really important to us because of the nature of what our charity is. It is a heritage regeneration charity, so we do try and focus on our local communities quite heavily as well. You go kind of upstairs from here, you get though into what I think is probably the most useful from an RE perspective, which is our two contemporary galleries, Gallery 3 and Gallery 4. Gallery 3 is very, very much a temporary exhibition space where we invite contemporary artists to come and show their work, or we can commission as well. So the gallery on your left-hand side has an installation by an artist called Roger Wagner. He is a Christian artist, and he specialises in modern recreations of biblical scenes in the contemporary Middle East. Some very, very challenging, very interesting works there. Cover lots and lots of themes from environmentalism, Islamophobia, all sorts of different things we can draw out through that. And then on the right-hand side is the artwork we've currently got on display in this really beautiful building. And it is an artwork by Matt Collishaw, and it's an iris that kind of flowers and then bursts into flames. It's impossible to do it justice on a photo or a video, but it is absolutely stunning. And what's really interesting about it as well, obviously there's so much symbolism that you can unpack, but it's also been created partially using AI, so it opens up a lot of kind of ethical questions there as well that I'm really excited actually to discuss with our students. And then finally, this is Gallery 4. So the Gallery 4 looks at contemporary responses to kind of global issues through the lens of art, but specifically through the lens of faith. So you can see on the left-hand side of the picture, we've got like a fantastic timeline, which has got infographics and statistics, some really good images as well that we can use. And then we've got all of these different artworks going through the gallery. And every artist that's exhibited in the space, we've asked them to respond to one of 3 key questions, which I think is really useful for us in terms of kind of linking into the RE curriculum or the RE syllabuses in particular. And those are, am I alone? How do I live? And where do I belong? So these can link into everything from faith responses to the environment, faith responses to global issues, for example, like refugee crisis, but also can link into kind of ideas around identity, belonging, communities, interfaith movements as well. So there's an awful lot there, lots to see, lots to do, but just kind of gives you a little bit of a brief overall picture, hopefully, and a little bit of a flavour for what we've got. So I'll stop very briefly, and I bet I'll ask, has anybody got any questions, comments, anything they'd like to say so far?
Can I just say, Gemma, I think it's absolutely awesome, absolutely brilliant. You've done an amazing job. It's wonderful. And I just can't wait to come along and see it. There seems so much there that we can use across the key stages. We work specifically looking at how the relationship of the development of faith in the Northeast fed into curriculum materials.
Wow.
If only at the beginning we'd have had your museum as a place for us to go and visit as part of delivering the curriculum. So my mind at the moment is jumping all over the recent redraft and what we would do and how we would encourage schools who still follow illuminating pathways to embrace those learning opportunities with the artifacts that you have there.
Fantastic, yeah. And I should say to everybody, you're all more than welcome to visit anytime. We offer, and I know this isn't just exclusively teachers in this room today, but we do offer free teacher tours. Basically, just drop me an email if you'd like to come and I'll show you around. But we'd love to have you.
Good evening, everyone. Apologies, I've got my camera off. It's been a very long day and I think I'm getting ready just to get into my gym jams, even though it's rather early. Right, gosh, thank you for that, Gemma. It was really quite insightful just to see all the hard work that's gone into pulling together a great resource, not only for Durham, but for the wider area. And started as the director for Borderlands. Borderlands is funded primarily by Arts Council England with some support from the local authorities and the combined authority. We're one of, I think, about 39 similar projects across England, which are based in areas where local communities are the least likely to engage with culture, creativity and the arts. And Borderland covers Middlesbrough and Redcar and Cleveland. We are currently hosted by Teesside University with an independent consortium, have a couple of big themes. One is around heritage and place, and the other around environment, but very much around storytelling, and also communities having the opportunity to kind of see themselves, their history, their community in lots of different spaces, including museums. And this is great because, and I think in terms of diverse faith communities, it's rare for them to see anything that relates to them in a museum or an art gallery. I mean, occasionally there'll be some exhibition, but not much on offer locally. And I'm already straight away thinking, oh, we could arrange some go-sees for some of our communities.
One of the big struggles that we really, it was really, when we were developing the museum, it was really, really important to us to have a range of diverse voices throughout the museum. And it was really difficult because there isn't the same level of material culture out there, because these voices have been marginalised for centuries, if not millennia. So any access that we have, this is a museum, it's not going to stay the same, it's going to change and rotate and update. Where we can share those different stories and where we can see those objects is incredibly important, and will continue to be important as the museum develops and goes forward.
Yes, Gemma, amazing. Can't wait to come. But my other thread is a charity. It's community sponsorship. It's called Tyneside Welcomes, and the website is tynesidewelcomes.org. And that is community sponsorship to resettle families in the Northeast. And it's done as a community. You have to form a group, raise money, fill in a very extensive form for the Home Office, and then they match the accommodation you find to a family. So we have Syrian Muslims, we have Iraqi Palestinian Muslims, and we have Iraqi Chaldean Christians who've come. So that's a thread that obviously is developing in terms of what we go to see together.
So what I thought I would do with this session is really kind of talk about how we use this space. We've got this incredible building, these incredible resources, but how do we use them for teaching in RE? Because they can be just really, really powerful. And I think for us, as for me as a museum professional, something that we really we always stick to with whatever we do is a level of quality. And that's the same kind of quality that you would get in the classroom, hopefully, as you would get anywhere, you know, we aim for that to be when you come for a visit to somewhere like the Faith Museum, any museum or gallery, and I'm sure any other heritage education professional would say exactly the same. And one of the real key things that we do as a sector is we really kind of hone in on object-based education. So specifically using the objects, the artworks that we have in order to support students' educational development and social development as well. It's, for me, a really nice way of learning. It's a very, very multi-sensory approach. It involves a lot of communication. It involves touching, thinking about the person who owned, created, who may have used a particular object. And I think that is incredibly powerful across the curriculum. It's, you know, it's something that can stretch and challenge really able students. Giving them an original piece of source material is incredible, but for students who perhaps struggle more in a classroom environment, that multi-sensory, able to touch and feel and be supported by other students, and it, you know, it's a really accessible way of learning. But I think for RE in particular, what it also does, because these are real objects and real people, is it inspires some empathy as well, and get students to think about not just the abstract concepts, because you know, in a lot of ways, RE, religion and worldviews, is very abstract, but it gets you to think about real people and real experiences. And I think something that we do actually hopefully quite well within the Faith Museum is we do really look at that level of individual lived experience, and we can discuss that. That's why we're really a faith museum. It's not, we don't call ourselves a museum of religions, because it is about individuals, and it's about the multiplicity of experiences that people can have and the different traditions they can be influenced by. You know, we all know that faith religion is so incredibly complex. And we, you know, we could never do it full justice in 4 short galleries, but it's to try and help people to understand that level of complexity as well. So lots about what we do. Everything is guided by the collections, by the objects that we have on display. We also supplement everything that we have in the cases. Obviously we can't get those out, but we've got an amazing handling collection as well of at least a couple of hundred objects, I think now, from early sort of 20th century menorah, which was owned by a family in Bishop Auckland, to prayer flags, to family Bible, to humanist objects from naming ceremonies, just all sorts of things, to really kind of bring the experience to life. And I know that's something that the Religious Resource Centre does so well as well. And I would always say, you know, it's such an amazing opportunity to be able to give students real objects, real resources to be able to use and develop. So that's very much kind of core to our philosophy. And I think with the Faith Museum in particular, we have a real additional advantage, and that is within our artwork that we have on display. So I'm gonna put the PowerPoint back on, because I'd like to show you some of it, and I thought we could have a bit of a chat about it as well. So just bear with me. Here first, what I would like to do is, if I, there we go, I'll flick through to, oh, you got a sneak peek there of the artwork. I'm going to flick through to this quote, because when I was looking at how can I explain, and I wrote it down so many different ways as to why having these incredible artworks in the Faith Museum is so important, I came across this quote from the Singh twins, and it's in the most recent copy of RE Today. And the Singh twins are a group of artists who we actually have on display in the Faith Museum. So I got very, very excited, and they said more or less exactly what I wanted to say. So I'll read the quote out to you, because it says, "You can learn anything from art, and RE is no exception. Art has long been used to not only convey spiritual concepts and beliefs, but to teach social values and offer moral lessons for daily life. It can also offer a very accessible way to engage with multiple faith perspectives and cultivate interfaith dialogue and understanding." And I think they couldn't be more right with that. Art has in right across different cultures across the world has been used not only to inspire worship, to express theologies, for devotional purposes, all sorts of different things, that it is really intrinsically linked to faith. And I think for me, not only that, but art is the kind of the ultimate expression of what is within us, whatever that might be, whether that's creativity, imagination, or our belief system, our worldview. And so the expression of art is the expression of really faith, what is within us. And I think that is therefore an incredibly powerful tool that we can use and which young people can engage with. I also think it's quite a nice kind of middle ground for students. It's slightly separated from the person, it's separated from the individual. And the great thing with art is there's no wrong answer. So you can ask those difficult questions. You can come up with those ideas using a creative medium that I think sometimes, and I talk about this particularly at the secondary level, you can kind of struggle to break that barrier down with students. They worry about asking the wrong question, saying the wrong thing, but put a piece of artwork in front of them and it's a little bit easier. You can spark up that conversation. As well as that, you can also then use the artwork for students to create their own response, which is so valuable and so powerful, not only in terms of enabling them to kind of process what they've learned and to look at it through their own kind of perspective, but also in terms of their own reflection and developing their own worldview as well. You know, I'm really excited with the artwork that I'll show you. I'd love to do some work with young people around identity stemming from it. So I think there's a lot that can come out of it, and again, that's why it's such an interesting tool. So the artwork that what I thought we'd do is I'll show you. Sorry.
No, I don't want to interrupt you mid-flow, but there's a really interesting question which I think would be well posed now from Marianne. Marianne, do you want to tell us your question? I'm not sure if her. Okay, I can read it if you like. Okay, so it's, have you had any feedback, or are you planning any way of coping with students who are neurodivergent, like dyslexia? How might they respond to the museum, or how might you ensure they have access?
Yes, so we have a network of feeder schools with whom we have very strong long-term relationships, and 3 of those schools are special schools. So I have sat down with the RE leads from those schools, one this week, and then a few over time, and very, very much working very, very closely with those teachers, with the students individually as well. We've worked again with our other schools, also have kind of nurture groups and things to make sure that it is accessible. One thing that we do is we don't open to the public Mondays and Tuesdays. So that means we bring, if we have particularly neurodivergent students, we'll try and bring them in on those days. It means I can turn off some of the AVs. It means we can do things a little bit more slowly, smaller groups. Very, very much with something that I'm really keen to do within all of our programs, not just in the Faith Museum, is a very bespoke approach, particularly for students with additional needs and particularly for neurodivergent students as well, because I think it's just so important.
That's great, Gemma. I don't know if Marianne's got a further question, but it's worth saying, you've been on this for how many years now? I've
been as part of the Faith Museum team for 3 years. 3 years this month.
Yeah, and with lots of consultations going on. So
yeah.
And I think also I'm really impressed with the way the education team are committed to learning as the exhibition opens. So I think, Marianne, if you've got particular students or concerns or experience, then do feed them in. We are going to put Gemma's email out, so you can get in touch with her directly if you don't want to do it in this public forum now.
Yeah. And I should say we have all sorts of literature and things as well that we sort of share out and send with schools, and we're not precious about it. You know, if you say, oh, this workshop looks great, but we're not really sure about this element, can we swap it for this? Absolutely, as long as it links to our collections. We're here as a resource for you. So, you know, we are more than happy to adapt and change and develop as we go.
Okay, brilliant. We've got a question of from Helen Sage, which we might want to take just before we go into the actual activity. Is that okay? We've got time for that. Okay, so Helen, do you want to ask your own question?
Yeah, if that's okay. Just thinking about how core RE is compulsory at Key Stage 5 and how some colleges have approached this through doing extended project qualification as being a way of delivering it. I just wondered whether you'd any thoughts or reflections or any feedback on whether you've had any approaches from any individuals or from any establishments on how you could work collaboratively or run specific workshops to enhance students' experience at Key Stage 5.
Yeah, so I have actually, I was in a secondary school the other day. I do this every year and I meet with all of the subject leads and we go through the whole year and we plan out a year's worth of activities. And the person who's responsible for coordinating RE at Key Stage 5 jumped in at break time and said, can I speak to you? And I'd love to do something together. And he sent me a list, he sent me a scheme of work for the year. And I'm hoping to sit down with him in the next couple of weeks to put something together. We have focused mostly on key stage 3 and 4 in terms of our development so far, but it is looking like we're going to be looking more at key stage 5 going forwards. I don't know about further education and kind of colleges as yet, but certainly sixth forms. And I'll start speaking to the colleges as well and see how we can support that. But yeah, early days in terms of Key Stage 5, but it is on the radar.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you very much indeed.
So I have got a picture. This is an artwork by an artist called Nicola Green. She is the wife of the politician David Lammy. Which is, that's where you may have heard of her or him. And this is part of a series of about 40 artworks called Encounters. So it's the middle image, but I've blown up some of the backgrounds either side so you can see it. This particular artwork is called Saffron, and all of the artworks in the Encounter series show faith leaders from around the world. And they are photographic portraits based on original photographs that were taken during interfaith meetings. So that can be anything from two faith leaders meeting together to sort of big kind of interfaith conferences. In the museum, we are using these artworks as part of our faith diversity workshops, which we offer basically kind of anywhere from Key Stage 2 onwards in various different themes. Some students, they're more local, older students, they're more global. But we really look at not just introducing students to different faith communities. Bishop Auckland, we are not very diverse. We're 98.5% white British. So for a lot of our students, just exposure to different faith communities is actually a really significant part of our work. But we also look at issues around faith diversity. So we look at some of the statistics for the region, but we also look at some of the interfaith movements and how different faith communities work together. So students, by the time they come to this artwork, will have had a little bit of that context and a little bit of that knowledge. And the question that we usually look at is, how do these different faith communities work together? So thought what I would do is just do a bit of an activity. If you could pop answers in the chat, I think I can see the chat, is to kind of look at how we might look at this artwork in particular. I've got the chat up just here. So first of all, can you tell me, anybody, and I wouldn't expect students to know this, but you might, who have we got in the picture? Who is the person in the artwork? Ah, exactly. We have got Rowan Williams meeting the Dalai Lama. And of course, the Dalai Lama is the subject of the portrait in the middle. And what religion is he from? Obviously, he is a Tibetan Buddhist. And so the first question that we would ask for these students is they might not know who that is. And for most students, I tried it out with a group of year 8s actually yesterday in preparation for this talk. I said, do you know who this is? They were like, no. But I did ask them the second question, which is, what faith community do you think he's from? And they all managed to work out that he was a Buddhist. And we talk about, one of the things that we do talk about is the reasons why that is. How do we know that he's a Buddhist? How is he identifiable? And how does a young person identify him in this image? I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, absolutely. His clothes, the way he's dressed, he's got a set of, I think they're prayer beads on his wrist as well. Very, very clearly identifiable. What's really interesting about this image, though, I think, is not necessarily what is identifiable about him. He's very clearly linked to his faith community, but obviously there is something unusual about this image in that he doesn't have a face. He is faceless. And that's usually the first thing that anybody points out to me when I get them all stood behind the barrier and we all look at it and we say, what's wrong? What are we looking at here? They always go, miss, he's not got a face. He's missing something. So my question is, why? Why does he not have a face? Why is he faceless? And it's the same with all of these artworks. So there's lots of different artworks from all sorts of traditions, from Baha'is, Zoroastrians, Christians, all sorts. Why have their faces been removed? Yeah, I think that's a good answer, Corenza. So they can represent a group. Yeah, which group are they representing? Helen's just saying as well, the faith stands out beyond the person. And I think that answers that question, because I think the idea is, yes, he is recognizable, and we can't get away from the fact that he is a recognizable religious leader. We can't get away from the fact that he's, one of the most well-known people in the world, arguably. But what she's very much trying to do with this artwork, and I read some work that she'd written about this, is she's trying to remove the individual from the role and from the tradition. And so I think you're right. I think he is, in many ways, he's representing Tibetan Buddhism, but I think he's only the Buddhist actually that's portrayed in this series. So there is an argument to say, is he representing other traditions? How does that feel? And by removing that face, by removing that sort of that personality, that individuality, it opens that up a little bit. And I think it offers that opportunity for reflection and offers that opportunity for discussion. I think there is another reason, though, as well, why she's removed the face in particular, and I think it's quite clever, because of the sort of the theme of these artworks, which is, of course, the interfaith movement. I do like that, Corenza, as well. She said, we're looking at just this painting and not a series, a removal of the ego. Yeah, I think to be honest, I think that is part of it as well, and I think obviously particularly with this image as well. Another reason that I can kind of think of is we've got lots and lots of different portraits from lots of different faiths, and not all of those faiths have figurative art styles. Not all of those faiths allow figurative artwork. Not all of, for some communities, having a portrait of an individual, can be seen as idolatry. And by removing that faith, removing that individual, she still honours her own kind of artistic traditions, their own Western artistic traditions, but it enables her to do that with a little bit more respect. And it enables her to, I think, be a little bit more inclusive. I still question it slightly, and I still think it could be potentially a little bit controversial, but it's very much about an idea around respect and respecting different traditions and bringing in different parts of different traditions as well. Something that you can't see in this image, but which she's also done, is the colour of the skin on all of the artworks is the same. She's mixed all of the pigments together, and she's created a kind of neutral skin tone, I think is how she describes it. That's very interesting to me. I'm not sure I would do that in my own personal artwork. But I think it's interesting that she's very much removed, I think, what the intention, well, what do you think the intention is behind that? I'd be interested to hear all of your thoughts.
I think it's a really interesting way of universalizing. I think that's quite interesting, but I guess it does eradicate some of the issues of justice for those that are oppressed. So I think that's quite interesting. Yeah, but it's a really good question to ask, isn't it? Especially at Key Stage 4.
It is, and this is something at Key Stage 3, upper Key Stage 3 and into Key Stage 4. these are some of the conversations that we try and kind of use this artwork to stimulate.
What
And
about little people, Gemma? I know that. What about if there's people? I mean, are there people in the room from primary? I'm just because I think I had a question phrased, which is, could I ask people in the room what RE themes are coming to mind for them? Because I think you've covered so many interesting things, but I just want to make sure that people in the room who are perhaps primary are given the chance to go, well, that doesn't really work for me, or it's too old, or just to hear what they think. Would that be okay if they're willing to say anything? I mean, Buddhism at Key Stage 1 in Durham. So that's quite interesting. This image could be used even at Key Stage 1, but it's just a case of how you handle it, I guess.
we have used it with primary schools already, as a series, not as an individual artwork. But it's been really interesting. I think we've done it with year 4-5 with the school that we had in fairly recently, and they very much recognised the removal of the face around the removal of the identity, which was really interesting. I was really surprised by how mature their responses were, and what they took from it was this idea that it didn't matter what they looked like, they were all the same. Which I really liked, actually, and I thought that was really that kind of idea around universality, but in a kind of more kind of age appropriate way, actually. And for a lot of students, you know, especially the younger students, and this was a religious diversity workshop, it was understanding. We focused more on the clothing, we focused more on the positions, we focused on the body language in the situation. You know, what does it mean if somebody's doing this? Are they praying? Is it a mark of respect? How should we treat people who we, you know, perhaps don't share the same traditions with when we meet them for the first time? So there's a lot of different ways of kind of looking at an artwork like this, and breaking it down according to the age group that it is. And so I guess that's kind of why I wanted to sort of introduce it, and sort of have a little bit of a discussion around it. But yeah, I am very interested to hear, particularly from the teachers, but everyone else in the room as well, is how you would use this. How would you use it? That's kind of a little bit of a stimulus as to how I would use it. As I say, my background is mostly Key Stage 3 and 4. We do primary as well, but I would be interested in your thoughts, because something that I'm very keen to do is to learn from all of the other people, and, you know, try and make sure that we do this right. And I'm interested to hear anybody's thoughts on this as well. So these are their prints. It's called a giclée print, which is a type of basically printing using like a really fancy laserjet printer. And they are supposed to be different patterns, inspired by whichever faith community it is, so Tibetan Buddhism in this instance, objects and clothing. And I can't work out what this one is. So that is my other question. It's one of my students, oh, the beautiful green of nature. I like that. I like that. I have a student working for me at the moment, like a university student, and she wondered if it was different colours from prayer flags, but there's no blue in there. So I'm not sure, but it's interesting, and I think I'll stop sharing now, but it's to give you an idea of the kind of questions we can ask. And I think also the fact that with a lot of these artworks, we're still very much learning about them, but there are always going to be a lot of unknown questions about these artworks, and that's something that, again, that we do throughout our teaching across the curriculum, is we look at these unknowns. And I think it's important for students to understand that there are unknowns in life, and that there are things that we can talk about and we can discuss, and we can come up with our own ideas and we can come up with our own theories, but that ultimately we can't answer all of the questions. And particularly, I think, around when we're talking about these topics like religious and faith diversity, what we really want to do is we want to inspire respectful questioning, That's really important. And we look, as I say, particularly at Key Stage 2, we talk about what would you do if you met someone of a different faith. For a lot of our students, they haven't.
Are there ways that the museum can help or come to the school to help with the art if they can't make it to the museum?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. We know transport is the biggest challenge, so we're more than happy to come to you. Most of our workshops can be adapted for outreach purposes. If schools are struggling to fund a particular workshop, that's a conversation that we would have. We do have a small bursary fund, but that is a conversation that would be taken further, if that makes sense. But yeah, definitely outreach, definitely come to you, because it does make it 1,000 times easier.
Brilliant. And how do we get in touch? Like, who do we go to for more information?
You can email me. That's absolutely fine. We're getting our website updated at the moment. I saw the question as well from Jane. We don't have a section on the website. However, either email me directly, or I think Corinne's got our sort of inbox, which is education@aucklandproject.org. Email that, and both myself and the primary lead check that every day, so we will see it and we will get back to you. So we offer free teacher tours, so just email me and you can come down and look. It is just, yeah, it's stunning. I found it, the year 8s I took in yesterday, actually, they'd come, it was the end of the day, they'd walked down because they've only about a mile away, and they were kind of all a bit, you know, it was the end of the day, we'd had the workshop, they were a bit fed up, and I took them into that room, and they just all went, and then they were silent. I had to take at the end, I was like, we've got to leave, you've got to go back. But it was incredible. I don't think I've ever seen a year 8 group just all sort of go all at once. It was quite something.
The Resources Centre is here to serve, whether you're in the region or not, so do get in touch as and when you like. And as always, we need to express our huge gratitude to Gemma for the fabulous session, and you can hear how much work she's been doing. I mean, it's not just the presentations, it's all the consultations and all the planning. She does the resources. There's a little powerhouse there. But also thank you to all of you in the context in which you're in and the context in which you serve, all the people that you affect and touch. Thank you so much for everything you do. Gratitude is huge from here. So go well, look after each other, and we'll see you soon.